What it do, Bean Crew? It's your boy Segel and Thomas back with another episode of Coffee and Comments. And this is in our React and Recap series. And we're reacting to Season 1 of HBO Max's The Winning Time. Story of the Lakers' 1980 Dynasty.
There's two things in this world that make me believe in God. It's sex and basketball. I'm about to buy a team. I want to build something special, a real dynasty. But I need a partner.
First pick, the 1979 NBA draft. The Los Angeles Lakers select Irvin Magic Johnson.
They do.
So this is again a reaction to the season 1. It's a pretty awesome show. Like I rather enjoyed the plot of it. Like when I saw the trailer, I was like, man, I'm going to watch this because I enjoy sports. I'm not a big basketball guy. Like I will watch basketball because I like sports. But I'm not like, man, I need to watch this basketball game and I'm super hyped about it. Now playoffs, I'll watch the playoffs. But everyday basketball, it's kind of like if it's November, I'm watching football. If it's even February, I'm watching football, Super Bowl. But for me, this was really interesting just because I love history. Like it's history of sports. I shouldn't say that. I love history too, but I love history of sports and just understanding what it was like back then and realizing like we're making history now. Like we'll look back and be like, man, those times were awesome. Like Tom Brady, all these different championships, stuff like that. Same thing with LeBron James, basketball wise. So it's cool to see the legends of old. Like you hear about Magic Johnson, you hear about, I never watched Kareem Abdul-Jabbar ever, not once. I haven't watched one highlight. Same thing with Magic. I've heard stories of Magic Johnson, him doing all these different things, Showtime Lakers, stuff like that, but I've never done enough research or like watched highlights of him back in the day. So it's just cool to understand the history. And it's not perfectly accurate. Obviously it's a drama. It's a dramatization of a lot of stuff, but it tells about the story of Dr. Buss buying the Lakers and his first season to their championship win of like the Lakers and him running the Lakers, right? So if you don't know, Dr. Buss, Jerry Buss, he actually was a real estate mogul that in the 80s, 70s, I guess in the 70s, early 80s, 1980, he bought the LA Lakers, which that at that time, they were not the same LA Lakers that we know today. They won some championships. They've been to some championships in the past, but they weren't like this big name per se. They kind of were, but it wasn't in LA. The Lakers weren't the Lakers of today, right? Like if you think of LA Lakers, you think of like entertainment, you think of like movie stars being courtside, stuff like that. Like Lakers being good, everybody loves the Lakers, right? So, but back then they weren't that. And so when he bought the team, I think he bought it for like $80 million, which today they're a $1 billion franchise. And it's an interesting story, right? Because he didn't have the money, so he has to like figure out ways to have the money. And so the show really depicts a few different parts. You have the story of Jerry Buss and him like dealing with different things. He was a womanizer, had a lot of women, Playboy mansion, stuff like that. But him like running the organization. You have a story of Jeannie Buss, who's his daughter, which she's trying to figure out her life within the thing she's. And she went to school. She's an intern for her dad, but she has the aspirations to be in management, which eventually she does. Because everybody knows Jeannie Buss because she's, famous in the Lakers. She runs the Lakers today. And then you have Magic Johnson's story and him getting drafted by the Lakers and where he comes from in Michigan and the kind of feud with Larry Bird, which I don't know if it was that big. It was a big deal. Like I know they always battled, but it makes it seem like Larry Bird is the biggest asshole in the world in this show, which he may be. I've heard stories about him talking crap to people that is super wild. Like Larry Bird would say, "I'm going to shoot just left-handed today."
Larry told all of us and the media, he said, tomorrow night's the last game of the trip. I'm going to play this one left-handed.
So when you look,
right, and that's what he would do. But it just, I don't know if he was that big of an asshole as the show makes him seem like, and as big of a country boy as the show makes him seem like. But maybe he was. But I just like the dynamic of the show because it talks about Magic Johnson and like just kind of where he grew up, him being this personality that is a womanizer as well. So dealing with a lot of women, which he didn't like his depiction, as well as Jerry West like his depiction as well. You also have Jerry West, who now we know for front office work, but he's the NBA logo and the face of the Lakers for a long time. And so you have all these different characters intertwining into the story, right? And then you have some different people within the story that I didn't expect. Everybody that played in this movie and this documentary did a great job. Like the guy that played Magic Johnson, Quincy Isaiah, he was phenomenal. I feel like his personality fit what I know what Magic Johnson is, which is big smile, very entertaining. People love him, right? Always want to hug him. Then you have John C. Reilly playing Jerry Buss, and he phenomenal. Like John C. Reilly, I've never felt like he fit a character more. Like he does a lot of comedy stuff, but I feel like it's easy to be a character when it's comedic. Like you're just being funny, right? You're not having to play a role. Like he played Jerry Buss and showed range. Like he showed emotion. He showed obviously funny, but he showed like anger. Like there was a lot of stuff that he had to do. They asked him to do in the show that I totally did not expect out of John C. Reilly. All I know him for is Talladega Nights and Step Brothers, and the characters he plays are both idiots, somewhat, right? And they're just being funny guys, and it's not hard to do that. I mean, it's hard to be funny, but you don't have really much range. Like, you get what I'm saying. People that watch movies, you get what I'm saying. So they also have some big actors in here that it was really cool to see. Like you have Jason Segel playing one of the coaches. You have Adrien Brody playing Pat Riley. You have Jason Clarke playing Jerry West. You have Wood Harris playing just a regular player. Like there's some big names of like people that I don't say are known, but they are known. But they've been in good movies, and they just like they did this show, and I'm like, man, this is a really good cast of people that have roles within the show. And so it's really cool to see everything play out. But so just to kind of recap the show, episode 1 starts off with Magic Johnson getting drafted to the Lakers, then working things out. It goes from that to them getting a new head coach because Jerry West quits. So they hire this new head coach that gets them ready for the season and working things out there. Magic does his thing. And then just the story of the season and them winning games, and then the coach gets injured and he's out. And so they have to have Jason Segel take over. Jason Segel's not a great coach, but Paul Westhead did win a championship, who he portrays. And so it just tells the whole story about the season, them winning, and the different drama that happens in the back in the office, them eventually making enough money to actually buy the Lakers and pay it off and keep the ball rolling, and then they win a championship. Which they did win a championship, Jerry Buss's first year. So it's an awesome story about the 1980s Lakers. And so I'm intrigued to see where they go moving forward. Like, do they just keep it as one championship per season? Do they keep it? Do they kind of switch to more of the personal lives of the people? Like, what do they choose to do with it? Like, it's going to be interesting to see how this story unfolds, because I don't know how like where do you go from here? Because the first season you have a championship, but it's going to be boring if every single season you depict it and it's just a championship. So do they just go one season by episode? But then if your thing is to do the entire 1980s until Magic gets aged, which they show that, and that's in the 90s, but they show that in the beginning of the season. So if it's the goal is to get to that point, then you're going to have, I don't know, 9 seasons, 10 seasons, if you're just doing it year by year. But if you're doing it multiple years in a span of a season, that will make more sense. So I think they'll probably do that. I don't know. We'll see. I'm enjoying it, though. It's a good show. Check it out. Again, that's my react and recap to season 1 of Winning Time. So thanks for tuning in to another episode of Coffee and Comments.
Nothing to lose, I was starving from the start. Now the same cat driving Jaguars.